red light indicates that it's on, I guess. Okay. It is, let's see, 5:30 on Wednesday, April 30th. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Historic District Commission being held at the Town Hall in the town of South Kingstown. The first item that we have after the call to order is the approval of the minutes from March 12th. Oh, roll call. So, do we have Sharon Henderson here? Do we have David Hill here?
Here.
Do we have Richard Duncan here?
Here.
And let the record show that this is Murray Gates. All are present. I don't think we have any other members except vacancies, which we hope to fill. And next we get to move to the approval of minutes for March 12th, 2025. Give you all a moment to refresh your memory on those minutes. And when you're ready, somebody can make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the meeting minutes are approved. The next order of business is correspondence and public comment. We have a letter dated April 8th of 2025. This, I believe, was the letter that was, I don't know if it was sent to the town council or not. It was addressed to the town council. And I don't know if there's any comment on that letter. I think we all had a chance to review it prior to its dissemination.
I'd like to get a report from Brian about exactly what happened with the town manager, because part of the motion was that we would be able to communicate with him.
I mean, the letter was forwarded to the town manager.
I believed in making the motion that we would have some communication with the town manager by the staff or someone to arrange a meeting with the manager and the Historic District Commission.
I don't have a response to that, Richard.
So the meeting didn't happen.
No.
Is there any indication that a meeting could happen in the future?
To discuss what?
To discuss the letter?
I mean, the letter was largely aimed at the ordinance that was heard on the 21st, so.
Well, let me say for the record that we tried to communicate with the town manager and the town council about what we're doing as a Historic District Commission, and apparently that was not happening, wasn't going to happen. So I think from this point onward, we should not continue down that track. And that's just my opinion.
Well, Richard, I think the point was that we were supposed to have a meeting in advance of the town council meeting. Is that correct?
That's as I understood it.
I think that the broader topic is our ability to interact with the town council. And the frustration has been that we don't have much of an ability to do so. We have one opportunity per year to present to the town council, which we did. I think that was the October meeting. And then when there's further interactions, we're somewhat hamstrung as soon as there's a topic that's before the town council. And our only method of doing that apparently is through staff. What we had agreed to was that we would together as a HDC approve a particular letter with the caveat that it should be matched with staff communication to the town council, because we needed to somehow get a message to the town council that what was going on behind the scenes and what the context behind our request was. And I know, Brian, we spoke before I had signed the letter, and you were working on drafting a letter to be sent directly to the town council. And I don't know if that letter was ever delivered to the town council.
Well, I mean, so when letters are prepared for the council, my role is to send them up through the chain of command. I have been told that communications with the manager's office should be vetted through the planning director, and getting to the council goes from there. So all I can do is feed materials into the chain of command.
And for clarity, that policy applies to all other commissions and
Yes.
committees?
Yes. Yes, and that's the town manager's working style, based on his background, his military background, much as like yours. The previous town manager had a very different style of operating. This is the framework that I have to work in. I did provide a separate communication to the planning director that laid out a lot of the details, some of the disputes that had been going on, and correcting facts. The idea was that information would be communicated as part of the council agenda setting process. But again, I can put it into the chain of command. I do not participate in those council agenda setting meetings, so I don't know what may have happened.
So what would be the mechanism for finding out what the town council received in terms of communication prior to that meeting? I get the sense that they didn't receive either the letter that the HDC drafted and I signed, nor the letter that you had created. So there's a bottleneck someplace between this only recourse that we have for communicating with the town council in these situations.
I can inquire about that. That's all I can tell you tonight.
Can you set a time frame for when you will have an answer? Within a week, could you have an answer to us?
I can set a time frame for making my inquiry. I can't really set a time frame for getting a response.
Sure.
But I'll inquire tomorrow.
Okay. Anything else in regards to item number 3, correspondence and public comment? Okay. Item number 4, which is applications, we do not have any of those from the Kingston Historic District. Item number 5 is new business. The first of which is the South Kingstown celebration for the 250th anniversary of our nation's birth. And Sharon, I believe, sits on that committee. She sat on the committee for the town's 300th and was a great contributor towards that project. And Sharon, I think you wanted to share with us a little bit about what's going on with the 250th, and perhaps if there's anything that we can do as the HDC to provide any input.
Okay. I kind of feel, can I stand up? I feel weird sitting down and talking. Okay. So I wanted to start with just a little bit of news. I don't know if you know this or not. Just for starters, that Keith Stokes, do you know what just happened to him? Oh, he just got nominated and appointed to the, is it called a History Laureate for the state until 2030, 5-year. That's one thing they need to know. And the other thing is on the 4th is Rhode Island Independence Day. And that's going to be celebrated at the state capitol with tours and all kinds of things. If you want to take somebody and go up, I'm sure they've got a nice museum in there now, and they're really, it's for 250 and Independence Day to learn about it. So that's where I start. So what we're doing is integrating, we're doing a lot of networking with other history groups in the town. And we went to the state capitol, to the State House, and I'll pass this around. We did a demonstration of some things that happened last year in town and what we plan to do again that were already going on as far as some events. Right now, and this is for your information too, and I may have mentioned it's my last meeting, but the Kingston Library has a walking tour that the librarians did, and also they have a display right now, and I have these flyers, and I put that walking tour together, stapled it, put these out. That's one thing you could get there. Another thing is Erica Luke, Executive Director of the South County History Center, is doing a really nice display called Her Story, like history, his story, her story. And you need to see that. It opens in May, and I'll give you more direction on that. We advertise that as well. We are working with HDC, the libraries, and the center, the History Center of South County. Okay, also the Contemporary Theater did some plays last. Did anybody get a chance to see those? It was, I think, was What the Constitution Means to Me in 1976, and I actually purchased some of those books. So those are some of the things we're trying to do, is migrate, as we're doing here, hopefully. So I just want to read you the mission at the national level of the 250th America. It's a nonpartisan initiative working to engage every American in commemorating and celebrating the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the semi-cinquentennial. It is spearheaded by and congressionally appointed U.S. semi-quincentennial. There's a semi-quincentennial commission. It is a nonprofit supporting organization, America 250, together known as America 250. Oh, it's America 250 org and America 250. This multi-effort kicked off the America's Invitation on July the 4th, 2023, a national public engagement campaign inviting all Americans to share their stories and their hopes and dreams for the future of this country. Through July the 4th, 2026, America 250 is working to provide opportunities for all Americans to pause and reflect on our nation's past, honor the contributions of all Americans, and look to the future we want to create for our next generation. So this just isn't a study of the 1776 era. It's what's happening now. It can be. You know, what does it mean to you? So it's the huge space. So what we've done. Right now, we're just in the planning stages. They have some events planned, some of the people there, like bonfires and things like that, and celebrations. And what I've been working on, when I went up there to the State House, that's the reason I tell you the story, and I'll pass this around. Has you seen this? It's called Brave Men Has Ever Fought. And it is a portrait. It was a presentation. It's loaned from the Museum of American Revolution. And this is the 1st Rhode Island Battalion. And if you'll notice the people on the left in that photo, you'll notice they're all people of color, indigenous people, and the man that's walking in front of them is Chris Green. And if you look on the right, those people are Caucasian people. And so Rhode Island was the only state it was a colony at the time, I'm not sure. What was it? Was it a state?
We were a colony.
It was colony until like what we're celebrating on Saturday. Okay. So this group, we were the only ones that allowed them. And the deal was they could work for they could serve for 3 years, and they received their independence. Okay. That's it. You came out of slavery. And that was one way to do it. They did, well, you'll read about it. They did everything they could to get in. They would leave, they'd run, all sorts of things. So this inspired me. So as one of our things one of the efforts we're going to have is we are going to take and honor all Revolutionary War veterans. And I knew that they are posted on, all of the Revolutionary War veterans are posted on the 1932 War Monument at the Hazard School. And that monument is on the survey that they did in Peacedale. Okay, so what I did is take photos, and then I took and cross-referenced it and wrote them all down. And there's 107 of them. We're locating them in graveyards. We're flagging their graves. We're going to, and I hope to publish something just is that. Here's where they are buried. Here's who they were. Something like this, and that'll be that. I won't say our team. Okay. So while I'm doing this, and I've been doing this for a while, I look and I said, oh, I'll find all these guys from South Kingstown. And I had a column that said enslaved people, and I was in my South Kingstown, and I was going to cross-reference that, put them in. I was going to check off which ones were. Guess what I learned? They didn't put them on the monument. So in his book, right here, these are some of the speakers we're going to have. In his book, From Slaves to Soldiers by Geek, I think you guys know who he is. He's a local historian, and he identifies them. So I went in the book and went and found them. That's how I found out. And I looked, I had to create another list. So what I want to do is, as part of this a couple of things. I want to put that monument on the historic, the register, and I want to somehow, if we can get the money, somehow let it be known at the monument, these are the people who served. Let's see, yeah, that's it. And I've talked to the state archives, and they said that there's more that did this than just us. Well, we found articles in the Narragansett Times that say that when it was put on there, they were there was lots of arguments in the paper, and we've got the articles, and they gave them 3 days to check the list and make sure everybody was on it. It was 1932. So that's being investigated right now. And we're investigating, did it happen in the other states, so it become a state issue. So that's what this is. That's why you received a group.
Hey,
So-
Sharon, did I understand that you said that the activity that you're looking at is having these names added to the somehow, whether it's
Yeah,
another
that's
plaque
one
or
thing.
something, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Also recognizing them, okay? That's another thing. Now, if you'll notice who their masters were, I thought maybe it would be nice if we could identify, and you guys know that, any of the homes, any of the places that you know that may still be around for those masters. I thought that would just be some interesting things.
I'd like to add that if we do that, we would maybe find out where these folks lived before they enlisted.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
Yes,
which
yes.
would be very interesting to
It
know.
would be very interesting. It just gets everything flowing. That's a great idea. So that's basically the drive for that, and there's a lot of interest, and I think that's something that's kind of like, I guess it's like trying to solve a puzzle. Okay, the next thing I have, now, the other things I have to do with preservation, but there was an education piece that you asked me to do, and so that would be next, and I can wait just if I'm not supposed to talk about the education piece. We'll go, okay. This is really exciting. So after that,
Just for clarification, we're moving on to the second item of new business, which is Sharon's thoughts and proposals around education and outreach, which is one of our action items that's associated with the
and I was asked to bring
Comp plan,
3
yeah.
bullet things. This is one of them, sort of. I think the community would be involved with this. I also can tell you that the libraries are going to have, I don't know what they call it, but Laurel Clark said she would, if she would take these and have, like you check the book out and then come back and have a book talk. She'd do something like that. So that's another thing of integrating different people. Erica's helped me with some of this research at the South Kingston History Center. So looking at the Preserving South Kingston Education Engagement Historic Preservation, if you look at the purpose of the program, there's 3 pieces there. And I implemented them in what I found. And I came up with 2 ideas I think are just great. And they were in this book called the 200th Anniversary Program, and this is the American Association for State and Local History. And these people have come up, and I'm going to get, the next time you come, you'll have one of these in your hand. I just didn't have it because I didn't know how I was going to implement that. It's up on the screen right now. And he's actually got a page turner there. So I gave you all a handout, this horizontal. Did I give them all out? I might need to have one to refer to. This one? Yeah, he's got, no, this one. Can I see your red one? The one that's got color on it down there. That's great, okay. So the first thing I came up with, and this is under historic, it's called Public Lecture. And this fits about the part about educating the residents, the value of historic education in that thought thing, in that handout. Engage the community through in interactive events and digital outreach, and foster a sense of pride. This comes under public lecture workshops on that paper. If you look, I don't know what page it is, we'll be able to go to the page, but what I did under public lecture workshops, do you see where it says National Register? It's kind of, you can't read it, it's tiny. That's an excerpt from it, okay? And you really need to see the book. And you might be able to find it. I can tell you if you go there. No, that's not it. Is this great? Have you ever seen one do this? It'll be red, and it'll say National Historic Preservation, because they cover everything.
Sharon, is this the one about the training for
Yes. Oh,
National Register nominations?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that would fall under that. And what this is we could offer workshops or webinars on how to submit a house, property, commercial, civic building, or listing and everywhere I read, where I go to these places where they have videos and everything, where this is what our groups are doing. And this is something they do with the public. The public here thinks that historic preservation is an arm of, this is what you do. They don't understand the glory of it. They don't understand the beauty of it. They don't understand. And if we can promote that, I think we can. And if we can have a workshop or lectures, however we're going to do it, this is just a concept builder. We don't have to do this until January, where people come and learn how to do this. And I'm one who wants to, and I know other people who want to, and I'm sure you do too. So what is the process? And then within that, you tell them about why do you think they come downtown to come by the droves to lick Berkeley ice cream? Because of the preservation. And so I think that's wonderful, and hopefully we can do this. And so I just put that out there as one of the bullet points. You got any questions about that or any ideas?
Well, Erica has done some of that preliminary work for the National Register. She actually helped get Main Street enlarged, the National Register District.
Well, this would be just John Doe, public resident, come in and find out what goes on.
You'd have to have a trainer to do that.
That's what I mean. Exactly. That's what I was going to ask you next. Locally, at the state level, at the national, the person I met, she said she'd come and do it from the national. I have friends at the Historic Register that work there, and there's people who would come and teach.
Right.
So, and Erica would be beautiful. Thank you.
Well, she might be one of several that you
Yes,
would tap
yes.
into.
That's a wonderful idea. Okay, the second one is, this is my favorite, because I'm hands-on, is community events, and that's green. If you go to the green, you'll probably see it. It's a green page. There it is, right? Is that it? On the left, what does it say?
Says over.
No, down in the second one. What is it?
Community-led tours?
Yep. Community-led tours. Then does it say anything about community? I got it right out of there. Community scavenger hunts.
Yeah, we have that on a sheet here in
Yeah, I know, but I mean, it's up there. So anyway, like I said, I typed it out, and I thought this was great, because, you know, you think about scavenger hunts and people, that's boring. You put them in it. Somehow you arrange this, somehow you do this. And I talked to a couple of people at the town, and they said, yes, we could put it on several town websites. And let's pretend it's you and your wife, and you love history, and you want to be on Facebook. You go, we give you a list, you've got to find these places, you know. And then you have your photos taken in front of them. We can help you, whatever. I don't know what the game is going to be. I don't know. That's going to take creative thinking, and people have input, just like Rich did about, you know, about who should be, you know, presenting. But I love this, and they'll discover all these places they don't know about. Is like.
Sometimes, I've been on these before, but sometimes it's when they find the last place, there's a clue there on where to go for a reception.
Okay, well, see?
And that's
Already,
like
see?
a party at the end.
The creative juices, see, that's what we need, you know, sit around, talk about it. But I thought these were two good, really, ideas. I think this makes us user-friendly, and like it says, guess what? Our name's gonna be out there on Facebook, or are gonna be out there on any of these platforms. And I asked about it already, everything has to be approved, you just don't put things out. But they take the way I envision it is they take their pictures, submit it to us, and we put them up. They don't put anything up that has anything to do with South Kingstown. But I can see that really getting flying off. Our town, South Kingstown, R2. And I asked about that, can you put it on there? If it's approved, you can.
So Sharon, this would be on the 250th, whatever that anniversary is called. You named it,
Do you know what
Quincentennial.
It's semi-quincentennial, half of 500.
Semi-quincentennial,
Yeah.
okay.
Or I just say 250.
The 250th anniversary, it's on their committee's website then, not on
Well,
the
it's on our,
town's website.
this is me, this is us, this is CD, we're doing this under something that we can put in there.
You mean under the HDC
Yes,
website?
yes.
I'm not sure,
You don't
Brian
want
has
that?
not been receptive to that in the past.
No, I mean, we have a town committee that's been created to deal with this. The HTC should not be duplicating those efforts. So,
Oh, is that right?
yeah, they created a 250th committee.
She's on it.
I'm on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, so your board should be, you know, dealing with all.
Well, they
this.
asked me to come here and see if.
Yeah, I'm
for
sure we
you.
can, I'm sure we can contribute to it.
Oh, you'd rather contribute than be part of your thing, okay? You know,
Well,
No, I'm
no.
I'm saying if there's a program, a separate program for community events or this scavenger hunt, I'm sure we could be part of that, but under the
So you'd rather,
umbrella
okay,
of
I didn't
the
know,
250th.
I thought, well, the word HTZ, I hope is gonna be in here somewhere. What about when we do this National Register of Historic Places training? Why can't that be under us?
I mean, it can. I mean, we could do it during the year of the 250th, and if they want to reference it, they can. So
Well,
we could
see,
certainly,
here's
we
an
could certainly
example, and this is what
lead
the
an event like
librarian
that.
they said, we are helping them do this, okay? Meaning we don't sponsor it, we go around and pass out the flyers. I'm here telling you, I tell everybody went to the State House. They could be telling, as part of the initiative, they could be telling everyone what we're doing. You'll have to think about that. I don't want to take up all the time with this.
Well, I think if the 250th committee has some things that they would like the Historic District Commission to work on, they should probably invite you guys to a meeting, and you can decide,
Okay?
you guys can talk to each other about maybe a particular project or two that you
Because they
could
were
work
so
on
excited, you are
in
on their
conjunction with
agenda.
them.
So it's a blending for the first, it's great. They're
Yeah,
excited.
I don't think we have to get too bureaucratic and try to control who does what and who has ownership, but I'm sure in conjunction with the 250th committee, they would be overjoyed with having us participate.
Oh, they asked me to. They said, they know I'm going today. And they say, I don't know what you've got planned, but, you know, whatever. That's just, they want you in it, so.
Who is the chair of the committee?
Kenny, you know him? Yeah, Kenny Burton.
Sharon, thank you so much. You probably know that, yeah.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yeah.
The George Washington deal.
You're going to have to tell me about it. I don't know what
Well,
it is.
I've got two articles, one that says he did not do, he did not, they've got evidence that he has not been to all these places, okay? And here's another one, and Erica said that it's not in the historic record, it's not at the Library of Congress, it's not in the state archives, it's in people's diary. There's no documented evidence, and when you go to his records, for example, when he supposedly stayed at Little Rest, they have his records of, and the time he was supposed to do that, he went, one day he was in New York, and the next day he's in Newport. No way he could have stopped by here and spent the night. He had to go by boat, and he's got that all documented. So she can find the documentation that proves this is all it's legend. Have you read these articles? Okay, well, that's what I'm saying. This is important, because this town has based itself, and the article's about everybody wanting to be George Washington. So you should hear the diaries. Some stranger in the middle of the night came and walked in and talked to us and had dinner with us, and then divulged he was George Washington. Things like that, Santa Claus.
Thank you very much for these proposals. They're great ones.
Okay, well, I wanted to come back to the committee with this because you guys don't have any input on this whatsoever?
On George Washington?
Yes.
No.
Okay. I thought I could ask you as an authority on that. I won't. Sorry.
Some conversation on the two proposals that Sharon has?
Yeah, I think it'd be terrific if we could work with the 250th anniversary people on a program, on an educational program. I think if you could convey that back to them, that would be terrific.
And would you be willing to help with the slavery part two, that's part three?
Yeah, I'm personally interested in that. I've done some work on African Americans, their history.
I didn't mean to interject this, I just thought, well, I'll throw that in, sorry.
Did you want to designate a rep to attend their next committee meeting, or?
Well,
We have a rep in place.
I'm sure that she'd love to have you along, but I'll let you work out with Sharon how you want to do that. Would you like to participate?
I can give it a start.
Great.
We need more committee members.
Sure.
Okay, so is there a motion for this, or is it just agreed?
I think you're fulfilling your role of being the interlocutor with the 250th, so I think that's fine. Are they for us to eat or just demonstration?
North Kingstown, and when they got the register, they're on the register, the girl, that's why I was pointing to that, the woman who was here to represent the registers told me she'd help us, if we wanted to do something like, put something on the register. We could tie it all in, but I thought, well, that's kind of a
So that falls under outreach,
part of it.
right? Okay. Any other discussion on education and outreach? Again, thank you, Sharon, for putting that together. That leads us to some of the old business, and we've got election of officers. Up until this point, we've been talking about deferring this until we had more folks on the. Brian, do you have any urgency with us forcing
I don't have
a
any
vote?
urgency, and I agree with, with your membership being as low as it is. Hopefully, we'll have a couple of appointments in the coming months, and we can address it later. There's no great rush.
Okay. So item A, election of officers, shall be deferred until the next meeting, and we'll see how we progress from there. The next item is GIS mapping project. So as a reminder, and for those of us in the crowd, we've got a project here where we've been trying to essentially take all of the historic resources that are captured already in a volume that goes back to 1984 and make sure that all of those resources are captured within our GIS system. If you're familiar with that, you go online and you can see each plot, each lot within the community and get certain information, certain data. And it was primarily created as part of our tax assessors That was a question, Brian. Is it a tax assessor tool originally, GIS?
I mean, it's certainly, at this point, it is inseparable from the tax assessor's materials and invaluable to maintaining that data. But it originated separately, certainly much later, given the technology. And we are fortunate enough to be one of, or the only community to have a dedicated GIS administrator to work with these maps. So, and Carol does a phenomenal job.
So the GIS systems were put together when the comprehensive planning effort took off 20 years ago. And all communities now have a geographic information system where all of the maps for wetlands, for topography, for soils, all the things that you would use in planning a community are located, so you can overlay them and have an overlaid planning system. I was one of the ones who started this in the 1980s and early 90s, statewide. So I know a lot about it. It's about time that our GIS system had the inventory of historic resources up to date, and that's what we've been trying to work on these past months and years. So it's a planning tool. It's a major planning tool for the community.
So if you're not familiar with it, this is the entry page to it. It brings up a map of the town. You can zoom in, you can type in plat lot number or addresses, it'll bring you right to it. You can put different base maps on underneath the town data. You can call up different information such as, sewer information, zoning information. If you click on an individual plat, you can get all of the town's available data on that plat. You can also go directly to the assessor's cards for the plat. There's just an incredible amount of information. And we actually will be going through a major upgrade to this system because we will be switching vendors from a static system maintained by the town computers to a cloud-based system that will be much, much faster and much easier to update. So that is scheduled to be sort of transitioning to that will be Carol's sort of farewell gift to the town over the last couple of months that she'll be here.
So as Rich said, we've been working on this for probably a couple of years, kicking around a spreadsheet with a very short list of stragglers, properties that are listed within that volume of historic resources that we just can't identify what their plat and lot number are. And that's what you need. That's the one data point that you really need to be able to update the GIS system.
We're about, 80%?
Oh, more than that. I think there's probably 90 plus. There's less than, I'd say, 10 properties that are yet to be identified. And the question I was going to ask you folks is, could it be updated as is with a notation saying, as further properties get clarified, they will be added to the system?
And that may realistically be the best that you can do, given some of the data in the 1984 report, which is simply, a house next to a road in the northeast corner of the state. I mean, it makes it very difficult to find some of these sites, and the ones that you have left may legitimately not be able to be coordinated with existing street address and plat lot information, given what we have to go with.
Our plan was before tick season, which is here in force right now, was to go hike and try to find these places, and we weren't able to do that. But perhaps this winter we can follow through.
Yeah, our volunteer guide had surgery, so she was not able to do much walking. But I think that we can find a lot of them, actually. I think what we have to do is talk to more people. I've been doing that in the interim, and people know of the properties in Matunic Hills. So that was one of our zones of mystery because of the vagueness of the 1984 report. And I think some of the other properties are becoming clearer in the broader Matunic area. I think we have some properties along Post Road or between Post Road, such as the Watson Tract. And that would require, that's between Post Road and Point Judith Pond, that would just require some connections with local property owners who know what those properties are. They're private, they're generally private tracts of land that have houses on them, large tracts of land, and they're not really accessible or visible from a public street. So we have been trying to track these properties in-house with the use of Google Maps and aerial photography and the physical descriptions that we have. But I think it does take some field work for these,
The other option is to go live with what we have and literally create a page to say, we have been unable to locate these properties. If you have any information or know anything about them, please contact the planning department or a member of the Historic District Commission, and sort of make it a townwide hunt for information.
By going live, you mean on the town's website?
Yeah, I mean, we have the basic web map that our intern created. We need to make sure that we've updated the data spreadsheet that's linked to that with any other additional properties that you've located, make sure our list is complete. And then I would have to talk to Carol about, what is required to, put that out and make it available publicly.
I think that's a great idea. We can, care to make a motion?
When I was on the 300th, I went around and surveyed with 30 monuments in the town, historic monuments, found them all, located them all, and then I took an Eagle Scout with me and went to each monument and got the coordinates. Is that what GIS is?
GIS uses coordinates,
Okay,
right? You can
so
find
that's
coordinates
what
on
I've got for every
GIS.
monument, I got that. And then we were gonna put QR codes on it, and at the end of the year, before I finish, the project is finished. But and I was working with that Carol, I wasn't working, she was gonna add that in, she didn't have that information. For example, this monument right here we're talking about. All right, so that, apply that, I have that if you wanna put that in, by the way, if you want all those monuments. And the other thing is, you could use that, there's scouts that will get back, everything that would want to go with you and do what you did, what you're trying to do, if you want to do it in a season where there aren't ticks or something. But I'm telling you, there's a plethora of volunteers like that that are scouts, just to let you know that.
To your point, you're talking about something, some of these may be listed. I don't remember if there are any monuments listed in the 1984 book, but your point's still valid, is that 1984 is a snapshot in time, and we know that there are plenty of historic resources that aren't captured there. So we'd have to make a recommendation for how the GIS system is updated going forward with new listings, right? Including monuments or including buildings that fall within the now 50-year definition of a historic resource. So I guess it would be up to this committee to make a proposal on what that process is. I don't know if there's any thoughts about that.
Well, the nice thing about GIS is that it's modular. I mean, we can take what has already been built for the structural resources and just add another layer for monuments?
Because the monument, just this one, I'm just using, I've got 50, I think. This monument that's over at the Hazard School, it's called Monument 1932, that's on the register as far as a survey. Okay, it was surveyed in that 1980, is that the 1984 survey you're talking about where they surveyed everything in Peacedale? It's on there. So that means it doesn't have a GIS, or it does? I don't know. I took the coordinates, but is there a GIS? It may be on there. Do you have any monuments on there, do you know?
Well, I don't know if it's on there. The Hazard School is if you went to that plat and lot on the GIS, you'd probably find the Hazard School listed. You might not find any notes about the monument.
Okay.
And that would be where
But
you get
it
another
is in-
layer.
It is in the survey.
Yeah, well, I think it's in the National Register nomination
Yes.
for Peacedale. But I think that this would be great to have another layer for the historic monuments that you could work on, Sharon. You've got the coordinates already. And I think that's the way to do it. They would end up on plats and lots. Lots, obviously. I would think the monument would be on somebody's lot. And then we would have, put together another process to continually update what's on the GIS for historic properties. Because I think there are going to be more surveys. The Brent survey has just been completed, and he has unlocked another set of resources in Matunic that are not on the 84 survey. So there's one, and that has to go through its process with the State Historical Preservation Commission, but he has filled out inventory forms that are very much like the old 1984 inventory forms in terms of what they are. They're a building data sheet. And so it's logical to think that, in subsequent years, we will have more surveys done and more resources added after they go through a screening process. So probably what we should do at the next meeting is have some sort of proposal together that, talks about a process that Brian can feed back through the Carol and the planning department.
Yeah, if Sharon has the data, if you have stuff available in an Excel spreadsheet, that makes it really simple, because all we need are plat and lot numbers, and then in one column, Carol will link it to the database and include another column with the actual GIS coordinates, so that you'll get the lot that it's on, but you'll also get a pinpoint for where the memorial is actually on the lot.
That's what I have,
Yeah,
but I don't have what lot it's on. I'd have a description of this is where it's located. Then I use that. I didn't know you guys were doing this, or I would put it done it that way. And it's in Google Docs. I can put it in a spreadsheet. It's in a spreadsheet, but not in Excel.
yeah.
It'll go in.
It needs to be in an Excel spreadsheet for it to be easily linked to existing data. And we may be able to identify a lot of the plat and lot information on our own.
Great.
So.
Going back to Rich's point around the process, I think the process is going to be really important in terms of controlling what's in a certain layer. I guess you could segment things by layer, but we've talked about different programs that could leverage this data set. An example which probably isn't going to fly with the current mood in town, but if Sharon's activities around education and outreach are successful and there's a greater appreciation for historic preservation, then having something like a tax abatement program that's applied to some data set. And we kicked this idea around before and said, if somebody's going to make an investment into maintaining their historic house, that they would have some tax benefits. We never got into great details about that, but who is eligible? The eligibility could be tied towards some segment or data set within GIS. And that's why I think we have to put some thought around how properties are added to it and how they're categorized.
So we could give a directive, though, to Brian to go ahead and load the GIS with what we've inventoried already. So it's not, we don't have a frozen resource, we have a live resource. Have I got that straight?
Yeah, I think the last sort of drudgery list
Yeah.
was to get the site descriptions from the 84 book
Right.
in a text format that we could link to the database as well, so that when you call up the site, you would also be able to get all of that information.
No, that was for the National Register listed properties only? Or
No,
for all of
I
them?
think we were going to look at trying to get them all in.
Oh, my goodness.
I thought I had submitted that. I know it's been put together, so I have.
I thought you did too, Murray. I have to go back and look.
Well, that would be wonderful, but I can see that as being an effort. I mean, that would be the descriptions that are in the 84 book.
Yeah, and that we had some high school students work on a project to input that. So it should be done. Now, if it hasn't been transmitted yet and you're gonna ask me to go back and find it, that's another chore. Okay, well, there's a good discussion on GIS mapping. As I understand it, Brian's going to look into, in discussion with Carol and perhaps deeper into the planning department, what it's going to take to create that layer within the GIS system, capturing the properties that we have already identified as being on the historic list of historic resources. And we'll work on putting together a process for adding resources going forward. Does anybody want to take that on? Anybody want to volunteer to create what that process might be and bring a proposal for our next meeting?
Yeah, I could volunteer to do that.
Okay, thank you, Rich. Any other discussion before we move on to preservation awards? Okay. Our next item of business under old business is preservation awards. My only recollection on this line item was that we were potentially going to look at the property on Old North Road, the old seminary. Were we going to schedule something?
Yeah, I was supposed to try and schedule to get you over there, and I haven't done it. So I will make some calls tomorrow and try and get that moving forward.
I would think they'd be really receptive to having an award, given that it's on the market now.
He was when I reached out to him, and I just never got some dates and times. So let me reconnect there and get you guys out there.
The realtor is Chris. What's her name? Yeah, she's selling the house next to it as well on Old North. I agree that if we were to nominate a preservation work, I think that would be appropriate. Of course, we would need to go in and when we take a look for that nomination process, we would need to take the certificate of appropriateness and see how well that matched up with the preservation effort. It looks very good from the street, and I agree that it would certainly bode well on the market to sell it if it got the award. So I'm all in favor of going to take a visit.
Okay, sounds like Brian will get back to us on a possible date for visiting.
Otherwise, I would recommend or suggest we defer to next year, move it to next year.
Sounds good. Any further discussion on preservation awards? Maybe I'll just end by making sure we give a proper update for folks in the audience, and that is that we had gone out originally soliciting nominations for historic properties. We didn't get any. So in lieu of getting nominations from the general public, there's other properties that we have discussed as being eligible for a preservation award. So that's what we're following up on. Moving on to item D, which is the Matunic Historic Resource Survey.
So as you're aware, the draft report was submitted We have comments back from HPHC. Brent has worked on addressing some of those comments. We've had a couple of meetings with me, Brent, and Carol to make some map adjustments to better display the information that Brent had provided. Carol is going to work on completing those maps. She said she thought she might have been able to get it done by end of the day today, if not by the end of the week. And then once we have those maps completed, we'll send it up to the state for final approval from them, at which point we should be done. And I think the last thing that you guys wanted to do was to have a community unveiling of the final report, which everybody seemed to be interested in deferring until sometime after Memorial Day, when there would be more people in Matunic.
We'd also discussed having the zoning official potentially participate. I think that was a recommendation, that Jamie be a part of that so that he can talk to, Rich, sounds like he might have some information.
Yeah, it was the building official, not the zoning official.
Correct.
And what input were you looking for from Jamie Gorman?
I don't think there was any input from Jamie Gorman. Oh, Jamie Rabbit. There was Jamie Gorman that would help us with, obviously, the flood, the adaptation for flood that we described. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, I have to talk to him to see what it is he might be able to add to that discussion.
All right, what happens in communities that have historic properties that are listed in the register or eligible for listing is that the properties can obtain a waiver from the flood code requirements such that they can improve their properties for flood resiliency, but they don't have to meet the full code, which would damage the building and ruin its historic integrity. In the process, the building official meets with a committee, and those committees are called different things in different towns, but they're basically like a review committee, and appointed, and they work out with the owner a solution based upon the National Park Service's standards for adapting historic buildings for flood issues. And then there's also interface with the Rhode Island Historical Preservation Commission. In many Rhode Island communities, building officials, particularly if they're inland, have no clue about this. But some of the coastal communities do. And it's whether or not Jamie Gorman has any experience with this or not.
I can talk to him, but my guess is going to be that he hasn't dealt with this issue yet, at least based on other historic district discussions that we've had. But I will talk with him. It may be something that HPHC might be better able to describe for residents, at least at the moment. I don't know.
It's possible that they would. Jamie could also talk to his colleagues in Westerly, the building official there, building official in Narragansett, building official in Bristol, building official in Warren, probably, certainly the building official in Newport. Well, those are just, I mean, even the North Kingstown building official may have experience with this. So it's amongst his colleagues. There's probably a likelihood he could learn a lot if he doesn't have the information already.
And for those in the audience that have been following this topic, the HDC, if you're curious as to what the HDC does or is supposed to be doing, you can categorize them in different buckets, 3 or 4 different buckets. And one of them happens to be in surveying historic properties, essentially doing a review of the property, understanding its historic nature. Does it qualify
as per the Department of Interior standards, as a historic structure worthy of some degree of protection. And this was a survey that was done recently through a contractor that came, a historic preservationist, that surveyed properties in the Matunic area that are subject to flooding and damage with high waters. So this is kind of core to what a historic preservation organization can be doing. And we'd love to be able to do a survey of all of our historic properties, but that's a really big task. So the idea is to kind of chip away little by little. Do they do it ward by ward? Is that how they've done it?
Well, I know the first ward in Newport is really concerned about the buildings and the plan and all the processes
Right.
that they have, trying to figure out the fine line between raising and ruining the historical value and history of the house.
Sure.
Justine, is that the point section?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why the building official in Newport has the experience on granting these waivers for the flood code.
First place I thought of when you're reading off the list,
Yeah.
Newport, very active, interesting.
So before we leave the discussion, I just wanted to show you
While he's waiting, when is the next survey done, like the one that was done in 80, where they do the whole state?
They're not doing that much anymore. They've shifted to a sort of community by community. I mean, this is small community, not town by town, but village by village or district by district approach to survey work. So that comprehensive level survey is not done really very much anymore, unfortunately.
And Rich, I think you've shared that it's kind of done thematically. So in Newport, you may have participated in surveys that were related to African American history, right?
That's correct, yeah, that was done quite a few years ago now. So they would survey perhaps mid-century modern dwellings in South Kingstown. That might be a thematic type of survey. Or in a location in South Kingstown, like Matunic or Kingston area, or Peacedale. They might survey African American sites, which is a really interesting and of the moment kind of survey, like we did in Newport. So the thematic type is very, and the CLG process, the CLG grants, allow us to do this survey work. The certified local government grants that we get as a town. The town of South Kingstown is a certified local government, although I can add that some people don't realize that. And there are qualifications for that, and there are also incentives to use funds that come down from the federal government to do this kind of work. Of course, today, that all may evaporate at any moment. But that's the way it's been.
So just for everybody's update and edification, this is an example of where we are with the, or where we were with the mapping this afternoon, showing basically Brent's map has been imported into GIS, and it shows the 100-year storm with 3 foot of sea level rise with the blue line, the 100-year storm with 7 feet of sea level rise with the purple line. After the discussions today, this is going to be revised a little bit. We decided to not put in the 7-foot sea level rise because it seems pretty far down the line, and the further out you go in time, the more speculative it becomes. And then we're only going to have the blue line, but we're going to add in some other indicators out of Brent's report regarding risk level to specific properties. So the map that Carol comes up with is going to look a bit different than what's here, but this will give you a general idea. And then Brent had also asked her to map the proposed districts. So showing the existing historic district in Matunic, which is in blue, and the proposed districts, which is a modification here, and then 3 new proposed districts over in the eastern end.
Do they ever consider fire?
No, that's not what we're looking at with the risk here.
Oh, I understand.
And this is another activity of historic preservation organizations at municipal levels, is to help support and promote the creation of new historic districts. So most recently within the town of South Kingstown, we, actually before I was here, expanded the historic district for Wakefield. And I think that was the last addition to the historic districts within the town. But there are plenty of other opportunities for creation of historic districts, and remembering that a historic district does not give any regulatory authority to the HDC. There's only one currently in the town, which is South Kingstown. But we have a historic district in Wakefield and Peacedale and others. And that's what's recommended here, is having proposed historic districts.
Yeah, these are National Register historic districts, not local zoning districts. So they don't have any regulatory function other than protection from state and federal dollars that might be spent and permitting that might happen. And also, in terms of flood, it allows the homeowners who have historic buildings that might be in jeopardy to take advantage of those waivers that I talked about. And you know, that affects everything having to do with that dwelling. So for some owners, that could be really a positive thing for them. And you can see that the Theater by the Sea district does contain some historic buildings. The proposed one that enlarged that area, those properties are in jeopardy to some degree, or will be. And there are other areas that are close to the water.
Do those, 2 questions, do those districts ever get on the National Register?
Yeah, well, if they go through the process of the nomination, then they would be listed if it's positive.
So has Wakefield ever been nominated?
Oh, yes, Wakefield is listed in the National Register.
It is on it?
Yes. And so is Peacedale, so is Usquepaugh, so is Kingston.
The district is on the register?
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was just a survey.
Well, we did a survey of Wakefield to enlarge the district and to resurvey all the properties within the district.
And you didn't put the cemetery in there?
No, the cemeteries are not, it depends upon how and where the cemetery is located. Whether it connected to the actual Main Street area, which was the focus of the district.
At the time before they used the bike path? No.
Well, no, I understand the bike path, but you're right. It did not get included. There was a break. The school property is a break between where the cemetery is located and the park, Saugatucket Park, which was included.
Olmsted. So there's no chance for that to get on there, the cemetery?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'd say that there's a possibility down the road.
Okay.
Depends upon the information. And also the nature of the cemetery, who designed it, who's behind the design of it.
I know that whole thing.
And that would be very interesting to pursue. And the owners of it as well. I understand it's basically was a private type of cemetery.
The original owners are still the owners, because I did an event there. They came to see it
Yeah,
and thanked me so much.
right,
The original people who built it still own
right. So if they have an interest in National Register listing,
it. They do.
then that could be pursued.
One interesting thing that I've gained an appreciation for is in putting together the districts, there's a commonality or a theme or a story behind the district. So although there could be lots of historic properties around a historic district, if they're not part of that theme or story, they might not be integrated into the historic district. And Peacedale is a good example. So I was surprised at some point to find out that the Rotary in Peacedale, the flats, most of that's not part of the historic district. It's very important to our community, but the historic district in Peacedale is really themed behind the industrial growth of the Peacedale Manufacturing Company, the Hazards, and the Hazards building. So you think of the Guild, you think of the library, you think of Hazard School, all of those things tie into that story of.
But that community, that was the center of everything.
And I think there's a great argument for having that community be another historic district with its own story. There's a timeline difference too. I think the flats, the heyday of the flats and the buildings that are reflected there today probably post-dated most of the Hazards activities. I mean, there's certainly overlap, but yeah, I think there's definitely a potential there for a historic district. And Rich and I have had conversations about other areas that are really interesting and have their own stories to tell.
Yeah, and further note, Sharon, if you look at this new map that's being developed for Brent's work, you'll see that those red circled areas that are on the, sort of Matunic Village zone, they seem like you're thinking, well, maybe we should connect them all. But each one of those has a sort of a different developmental history and time. So the Matunic Park area is developed starting in 1895, and then there's the Matunic Point area, which is the furthest one over, that's later, and the architecture is later. And then in between is, I think, Prospect Street district, and that he determined was a little separate too. So that's why there would be 3 districts there, small districts. The same thing happens with Peacedale. The flats, there was a lot of discussion about doing a project that would add the flats to the Peacedale district, and the end result was that the flats really represents a completely different kind of time frame and story than the Hazard industrial story. And that's why, yeah. And the same thing is happening with Wakefield itself. So the cemetery story is probably different than the Main Street commercial story. Cemeteries are usually dealt with differently, and if they're a designed cemetery, like the Auburn Cemetery, which you've probably heard of up near Boston, is so famous. When you have a cemetery like that, that becomes really key to the National Register listing. Designed, famous people, monuments inside that are artistic, that kind of thing.
The cemetery actually could be tied into the Peacedale Flats, where that a new district, because one of the principal shareholders and the first person to be buried in that is Mr. Fisk, Stephen Fisk, from Fisk's Flat. So that could be a nice tie-in for it.
Brian, back to the flood zones, as identified 100-year storm and 3 feet of sea level rise and 7 feet of. I might suggest that you keep the 7 feet just to show the nature of the progression of sea level rise.
I'll have to wait and see what Carol's results look like tomorrow, because there is a limit to what you can do on a static map before it becomes so confusing that it's not easily readable. And that's given all of the information that Brent generated in terms of the ages of properties and what's contributing and what's not, and all of that. We're sort of pushing the boundaries of what we can do in a single map. Online, where people could go into GIS and turn layers on and off, or where layers turn on, the closer you zoom down into the map, we can do more. But a static map for a paper report, like Brent has put together, we have limitations on what we can display. So we'll look at it.
Any other discussion on the Historic Resource Survey? If not, we move into the next item on the agenda, which is staff update and planning department activities.
I have nothing beyond what has already been discussed.
No, it's just, Sally?
There is, yep.
No, you don't. No need to. It's a public meeting. Yeah, get comfortable. Okay, nothing under staff update. We move on to reoccurring discussion topics with the only item that we have listed here relative to our action items. Any particular action items on our comp plan that folks have been moving along?
I have nothing to add on that unless other members do.
What has been updated in the latest update?
There really hasn't been anything submitted for me to update, so.
Okay.
So, Brian, I can ask you about the subdivision and land development regulations. Is there any news about those?
Yeah, we're continuing to work with town legal counsel to roll out a wholesale review of both the subdivision regulations and the zoning ordinance, both from last year, because the last year's legislative changes never got input into either of those sets of rules. And, we're waiting on probably an equally large set of changes from the current legislative session. So
Right.
we're probably going to wait until end of June before we start doing anything, so we can pull in whatever the legislature is going to change this year.
So all of that, those suggested amendments you got from me, and you have them, right?
Yeah, and I'll work them in as changes are made.
Okay, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
I want to bring up one topic for the HDC to provide some input, and that is when I had presented to the planning board, so I had an opportunity to go to the planning board and share some of the things that we were doing and to ask for their feedback. The one item that the chairperson from the planning board, Maria Mack, pulled out was our action item around stone walls, which probably is a fairly easy thing for us to do. That is to make a proposal for a zoning ordinance change, if we feel that there should be one, relative to the preservation of stone walls in the town. So I wanted to get your suggestions. I think my name's against that action item, and I don't know if anybody else is assigned to it as well.
So there are lots of towns in the state that have stone wall ordinances, and if somebody wants to take that on, or if a couple people want to take that on, I would suggest that you start by looking at what other towns have done. I did write one while I was working in Coventry. It was not adopted, but I will advise you from my experiences that people don't want to see these be added to obstructions to construction. The focus typically needs to be on doing the best that you can to preserve the walls and make sure that all of those materials remain on site in some way, shape, or form as part of any development project. And also try to get developers to use existing stone walls to take into account their location when they're cutting out new lots for development, and not simply put lots in areas that blow away stone walls randomly.
Okay, well, I certainly will continue or I will start working on that if anybody else wants to.
There's also Leona, I think it was Leona Kelly and the stone wall state law, so you might want to research that. There's a state law about stone walls that contractors cannot remove them and sell them, which was happening when she was alive. Landscapers were selling stone walls. Builders were selling them.
That's another, Leona made a law that you can't go within 25 feet of a cemetery to
Correct.
excavate.
Yeah,
And that's why, I think, weren't most of the enslaved people buried around the outside?
correct.
So I was going to try to find burial on these, but I'm probably not going to be able to.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the same thing.
Actually, that exhibit that's at the South County History Center does celebrate Leona. So there's more information about Leona that you can pick up.
Excellent.
Brian, I have a quick question about our guiding strategy, the comprehensive plan, and perhaps a scrub of our action items, probably our solo action items. Is there a process to amend an action plan or eliminate an action plan?
Well, the comprehensive plan, we're going to wind up starting to work on the next revision to the comprehensive plan relatively soon. We still have a number of years before it's due, but it typically takes 3 to 5 years to work up a revision to a comprehensive plan because it is a major community effort. There's lots of public hearings, lots of public input. So, absolutely. If you think that there are changes that need to be made, we can do it as part of that process. The council can also make changes to a comprehensive plan, before going through a full rewrite of the plan as well. It often happens where development proposals it does happen on occasion that the council will amend a comprehensive plan, but not often. Not often.
Would that be worthy of an agenda item for the next meeting to see if there's anything we want to modify or eliminate?
I think given the feedback from the town council on how much they care and our ability to be able to go ahead and execute as we feel fit, I think we can just strike something and decide we're not going to do it, for example. Did you have something in mind that you wanted to discuss in particular?
No, I think that was my point.
Yeah, certainly. If there's something that we think is no longer valuable in terms of our or prioritization, we can put it at the very bottom of the prioritization list so that it's not addressed. At least, yeah, I think that would be the best approach. So the last item that we have is new discussion issues and future agenda items. Anything that folks want to raise for our next meeting?
Well, I think we should, and I believe the housing people are meeting after us. Is that correct? I think we should reach out to the housing people and help in any way we can. And I don't know how to process that or how to go about starting it, but I think that really has to be on one of our future action items, and that we have joint meetings or that somehow we communicate with each other. Hopefully you all can discuss that in your meeting, see if we can get together with you.
I think it's a great idea, Rich. To make that actionable, do we want to make a motion? Do we want to just have somebody assigned to Brian? Is that something that you can introduced during the meeting?
I'd just put it on the agenda for the next meeting. I can talk to these guys at their meeting if somebody would like to come and attend your meeting, or you guys send somebody to stay after your meeting and attend their meeting. So,
Sounds good. Thank you. Any other future agenda items? If not, we'll go ahead and open up for a motion to adjourn. Any seconds?
No, I'll second.
If there's no discussion, all in favor of adjourning?
All right.
Beautiful. Motion carries. Good night.